It's hard to believe that we've been having in-depth weekly conversations about movies since 2011.
So many great conversations over the years about so many great movies. All that said, producing this show week after week requires a ton of work behind the scenes.
Becoming a Next Reel member gives you access to all sorts of additional and exclusive content. Plus, you're helping us keep the lights on. Just head to thenextreel.com/membership, where you can learn more about becoming a member, which costs a measly $5 a month, practically the same as one fancy coffee drink. And you get so much more.
Every month, we record a bonus episode exclusively for members. Those episodes cover movies from whatever series we're covering at the moment, or add to previous series.
Some movies we've covered that only members get to hear us discuss include The Blues Brothers,
The Russia House,
Naked Lunch,
Independence Day,
The Hot Rock,
and Relic, the better one. Plus, members get to vote on what we're going to discuss for those episodes.
We also record additional pre- and post-show content in regular episodes that only members get to hear.
Like conversations about similarly themed movies.
And answering listener questions from our live member chat.
Speaking of our live member chat, we record almost all of our episodes in Discord, where members can chat right along with us live.
Members get access to other members-only channels in our Discord community as well. On top of all that, members get all episodes a full week earlier than everyone else in a private Next Reel feed just for them that includes all the shows in the Next Reel family. The Next Reel, the Film Board,
movies we like, Sitting in the Dark, and more new projects on the way.
To top it all off, members don't have to listen to ads. We've already eliminated those annoying, dynamically inserted ads that, let's face it, we all hated.
We are listening to you.
We love podcasting for a living, and those ads help to pay the bills. Now, we're counting on you, dear listener.
We promise we aren't going back to those terrible, dynamically inserted ads that don't relate to us at all. All we ask is that you consider supporting the Next Reel family of podcasts with a membership.
Again, it's $5 per month or $55 per year. Just head to thenextreel.com/membership.
thenextreel.com/membership. Get your access to early, ad-free episodes with bonus content, member bonus episodes, and access to member channels and live streams in Discord by signing up today. I'm Pete Wright.
And I'm Andy Nelson.
Welcome to the Next Reel. When the movie ends,
our conversation begins.
The Banshees of Inisherin is over. I best go over there and do whatever that thing over there I was going to do was.
Colin, Sonny, Larry. Didn't you and he used to be the best of friends?
We're still the best of friends.
No, you're not.
Who says we're not?
Sit somewhere else.
Now, if I've done something to you, just tell me what I've done to you.
When you didn't do anything to me. I just don't like you no more.
You didn't like me yesterday.
Why does he not want to be friends with you no more? Why is he 12?
What the hell's going on with you, me feckin' brother?
He's dull, Siobhan.
But he's always been done.
The other night, 2 hours you spent talking to me about the things you found in your little donkey shite that day.
Well, it wasn't me little donkey's shite, it was me pony's shite, which shows how much you were listening.
If you don't stop talking to me...
Colin!
And if you don't stop bothering me, I have a set of shears at home, and each time you bother me from this day on, I'll take those shears and I'll take one of my fingers off with them, and I'll give that finger to you until I have no fingers left. Does this make things clearer to you?
Not really, no.
Starting from now. But shush like, Polly. You know, shush like.
Yeah, I'd shush like.
Andy, the first time I saw this movie, I saw it alone in the theater, and I loved it then. I really did. I mean, I loved it. I watched it this time with my wife, and by about 90 minutes in, she's bawling at this movie. It affected her unlike the way it affected me at a level of depth that surprised me. And I'm curious your experience. Have you watched it with other people?
Yeah, my wife and I saw it together in the theater first time.
Did she cry? Was she a crier?
No, neither of us cried. We just both said, wow, that's good.
It's a deceptively emotional movie for a film that starts with its central premise being two old friends where one of them decides, I don't want to be your friend anymore because I don't like you. You don't imagine you can get 2 hours out of that premise, right? And yet this movie delivers in so many ways. Oh my God. I love it.
Yeah, it's a really interesting film that I think definitely is playing to the strengths of the actors who McDonagh put in here, who obviously he's worked with a number of them before. But it's just setting it in Ireland during or toward the end of the Irish Civil War in the 1920s. Kind of having all of that in here, having this story about this, just relationships in general. You've got these two friends, you've got a brother and a sister, you've got this young man in town, the son of the policeman, who's not necessarily as bright and has his own relationship with Colin Farrell's character, is interested in the sister. There's a lot of interesting relationships going on here, and it's just I find that the story is woven in I don't know, just an interesting way where it the way that it's connecting to the ideas of Civil War in general, and the way that a friendship can break up, and just like how much it can end up affecting things in so many different ways outside of the friendship.
So much talk of war, and I think the parallels are not subtle. So much talk of war is about like the dehumanization of violence, and it's going on the mainland, right? In this movie, at the same time that the most human of wars is happening on this tiny island, and I think that parallel is important in this movie, right? It's important to note that these little tiny conversations, like "I just don't like you anymore," can start incredibly impactful, huge battles and people doing ridiculous things to each other and themselves. I don't know. I mean, I think this movie it captures so much of that piece of their relationship and how it applies to escalation, that I think that's the reason to watch this movie, if not for the fact that these two guys in real life are such great friends, and that comes across on screen, right? Because I know that, I feel like the movie means more to me, because I'm hurting for them for even having to play these parts because they're such good friends.
Yeah. Well, and it's so interesting the way that this friendship can really, in a way, like change the essence of the people as well. Like after Colin says what he does to Porrick. I'm really trying to get these names because they're full of all sorts of Gaelic accents and things.
Yeah.
But when Colin says to Porrick, like, "I don't like you anymore," and breaks off this friendship, it sends Porrick down this path of insecurity and internal examination, and trying to figure out, like, is it me? What's going on? And eventually, like, he's having these conversations where he is getting angry and starts feeling like, maybe being nice isn't beneficial.
Yeah.
Like, why be nice? And it starts him down this road. He says some nasty stuff to Dominic, and he says, he makes up this nasty lie to this musician friend of Colm's, and in the end, he's like burning Colm's house down. And even at the end, after he's burned the house down, they're standing on the beach, and Colm's like, "Well, I guess that's it then, right?" And he's like, "No, if you stayed in your house, that would be it. But like, this is never going to end." And that mindset shift that he's had, where it's now war essentially, and like this, it's like this. It's such an interesting look at these civil wars, and how this microcosm of like how these things start and how they perpetuate, and the inability of people to look past something and move on.
Oh God, this other piece of it, of his relationship, I think really touched me, which was Porrick's discovery of his own blind spots. And hit that reflection of how we see ourselves versus how the rest of the world sees us. Like there's this whole thing, right, at kind of at the end of the first act, into the second act, where we have him exploring, like, is he really a dullard, right? Is he just a dense kind of simple man, like Colin says? He says, you're a bore. I don't want to hang out with you anymore. I have to have better conversations than this, essentially. And that leads Podrick on a journey of self-discovery where he's actually asking everybody, am I really like this? I'm not really, but am I? And I think he largely, I mean, his just lack of kind of worldly experience indicates, yes, he is. Like he's not Dominic, but maybe he's pretty close.
Well, and the lack of drive, really.
Yeah. Right.
Like his sister moves to the mainland to teach, and she's like, "Oh, I've got plenty of space here. You should move. You'd love it over here." And he just can't get past the idea of leaving. And he lies to her in his letter, and it's just like, I need to be here. Jenny's staring at me across the room, and we know she's dead, but it's like she's looking at me, and I need to be here to take care of my animals. It's like he can't think big. He can only think in these little tiny boundaries that have been set for him, largely by him without him realizing it.
Well, and culture, right? Like that is another examination of like the three sort of stereotypes that are at play here. There's the stereotype of him and many of the villagers who live on this island, and their experience of just like, hey, we do our thing and we do it every day and it's the same and that's rewarding enough. And then we have Colin, who's like, I can't quite do my thing every day, but I don't necessarily want to move off the island. And then, Siobhan, who's like, I'm done. I'm going to go explore the big bad world around us and see what's out there. And I think that, the fact that he runs headlong into that cultural conflict as a result of this relationship and what that conflict drives him to do. I almost wonder what the rest of the movie is like. Like if his rage fuels him to expand his horizons is provocative to me. Like I wonder if he's ever able to get over this thing. Like what is the second movie in this series like? And are they able to come to terms and see that, they've learned something from each other as a result of this? Because Colm needs to learn some lessons too. Like this is a dude who is not without his own despair, as they call it in the movie.
Yeah, it's brought up several times by the priest when he's in the confessional, and he clearly has been dealing with issues of despair in his life. This is how he's chosen to deal with it, by essentially cutting off what he thinks is the dull part of his life, right? And saying, I need to move past you and I need to focus on other things. And it seems to work for a while. Like he seems to have gotten himself into a better place, but he still isn't healthy. And his answer when Porrick won't stop talking to him is to eventually chop off all of the fingers of one of his hands. Like he has, just a useless hand now with no fingers.
And he's a fiddler.
Like when we finally see him in his little group, after he's cut off all the fingers, like he's just holding his fiddle in his other hand and he's like pounding it against his chest while they're playing because he can't do anything. It's tragic. And like, that is also the sign of a broken man who's just like, he can't figure out any other way to deal with this other than to chop off fingers. Like he's got some work ahead as well.
Yeah, he really does. I don't want to say that the island is its own character, but the island is incredible, and I sort of forget that places like this still exist, that they found even to shoot, to film, and it is beautiful, and so much of their relationship with each other feels so determined by their relationship with the space between them. and how far they have to walk to see one another and to get to the pub. And I do have fantasies about living in a place where there are no connected roads to get there or driveways. Like you just have to, if I want to come see Andy, I just got to cross a field. Like that's cool. That's dope living for me.
As long as I can have a good home theater, I guess it's not
Would
so
you?
bad.
You can because it's not 1923. We should also say it's 1923 in the movie.
Yeah.
So what'd you think about their relationship with nature, landscape, island living?
It's definitely an element of the film because they are all walking around and it becomes an essential part of what they do, right? I mean, that's what Horik does is he sells his cow's milk to the lady at the post office to get some money so that, that's how he can pay for things. And we never really see what it is that Colm does. So I'm not exactly sure his trade, but it's that sort of place where it's a small island of, I don't know, maybe 100 people here that are kind of living all spread out. And they all have, it's going to be workman sorts of jobs, farming or building or running a pub, running a post office, being a police officer. Clearly, a lot of people do fishing. Like we see a number of boats when Siobhan decides to move. And so we open the film with the landscape, right? We're coming down from the clouds into what kind of feels like a fictional version of Ireland, and coming from a writer-director who is, I don't think he's Irish. I think he's British, but, well, I take it back. I'm looking now. He's British-Irish. So he was born in England, but has citizenship in both places. So to Irish parents. I think that he's coming to it with this sense of crafting what feels almost like a fable. The way that we come down from the clouds over just this incredible green landscape below, right on the sea. And with just like the way that he uses music throughout the film, there's this kind of like heavenly quality with some of the choral pieces that we have that all presumably Gaelic sorts of singing. And it just feels very peaceful and does create this sense of space here that just I don't know, the way that we have this landscape doesn't, considering there's a civil war going on in Ireland at the time, it feels like we're in this bubble that isn't affected by those things in the outside, except that we now have this broken friendship. But it feels kind of otherworldly. And I think that's an interesting way to kind of create this, what feels like, I said, a fable.
Yeah, and we should say that Inisherin is not a real island, like to that explicit point. But if you, like me, love the idea of rabbit holes, boy, you can get on Google Maps and play around with checking out Inishmore, Inishmaan, and Inisherin. Those are the three big islands at the mouth of Galway Bay, and geographically, that seems to be where this fake island would have fit in 1923 for this story. And it's fascinating. It's off the western coast of Ireland. The thing was actually filmed north of there on Achill Island, which is also gorgeous, but it's not much of an island. It's like an aspirational island, like there's like a big river that cuts it off, but there's bridges and stuff. It doesn't feel as remote as these others in Galway Bay. So I thought it was fascinating, and just how effortlessly these people, and I guess effortfully, right? They have to live to make a living. They have this tiny set of 3 or 4 little animals. They have a horse and a cow for milk, and they sell the milk, and they have a pet miniature donkey. That relationship, like the relationship he has with that donkey and the relationship Colm has to his dog, I think are really important in this movie because they become almost like demons in the Golden Compass, Like I felt like so much of each of these guys' identities is tied to their relationship with the animals. And, when Jenny, the donkey, is killed because he swallowed and choked on one of Colm's discarded fingers. That was, I mean, apart from being sort of a sociopathic or a death story for the donkey, I understood Podrick's breaking point as a result of that better than maybe any other way the movie could have done that, because he had such an incredible relationship with that donkey. The donkey, just as an indoor-outdoor donkey that just hung out with him and hung out on his lap, and it was really special. And even the fact that he comes back to Colm and sees the dog and says out loud, "How could I kill you? You're the the only thing I like about Colm," effectively, which was that was the part where my wife lost it. She was like, "He's going to kill the dog. Is he going to kill the dog? Is this movie going there?" I thought it was really tasteful that he didn't kill the dog, because we already know how broken his life is as a result of losing that donkey.
Yeah,
that was incredible, sort of broken parallelism.
Right, and it does become this element in their lives that they acknowledge, like that, that's taking it too far when you take the life of a loved one. I mean, it really becomes their loved ones, their partners in life, right? Because neither of them have anybody else. And especially after Siobhan leaves, I mean, brother and sister, ideally they're both looking for partners, but she also acknowledges she's a little too much for the island. Like the police officer says, "No wonder everyone thinks you're crazy," or whatever, to the sister. He just like, she's a little too hoity-toity for the people of this island, and she's ready to get out of here and actually go to the city. But he's not. But like, who is he going to find here on the island? It doesn't seem like there's any young women at all his age. It just feels like a dead end. And so he ends up really kind of with Jenny as this partner in his life. And same thing with Colm and his dog. And so there is this acknowledgement that that's going too far. And so it's not like Colm intentionally killed the donkey, but there is this element in this, again, this idiotic decision of his to, one, cut his own fingers off, and then two, throw them childishly at Porrick's door, leaving them laying on the ground because he knows no one's home. And it's like, yeah, well, you didn't intentionally kill the donkey, but you're also an idiot for doing that.
Yeah, and this is the transference of rage, right? Of course, he didn't kill the donkey, but once the donkey is dead, Podrick has a vessel for his rage, right? He's able to transfer, like, "I'm mad at you because you're breaking up with me as a friend," to "I'm mad at you because my donkey is dead because you're breaking up with me as a friend, and I can't let that go," right? Like, it just becomes something that is magnified and escalates to a state of not emotional reality, but practical reality. It's a vessel, and I think that's important. And I think the other thing that's interesting about this movie is, because it's set in 1923, there is an interesting angle of this. Like, imagine it's 1963, and we're sitting in that pub, because you and I decide we're going to go be tourists. And we're sitting in that pub. How long do you think it would be? How many pints do you think we'd have to get through before a local says, "Let me tell you the story of old Colm and old Podrick"? Right? This is an origin story to a legend.
Yeah.
And I think that perspective makes the movie really interesting to me, because, I mean, you say, like, it opens up as a fable. It really does. It really becomes the next generation's bar story. And their story, like, what is the object lesson of these two guys that becomes the punchline for a future pub story? I don't know of another movie that does that quite so easily as this does. Like, by the end of the movie, I realized, I've just been told an origin story of a story I'll hear later.
But the other angle that you could take with that is, especially that by the end of the film, the battle isn't over. It's just beginning, really. you can imagine how, because especially like, they're talking, Colm says something about how, I haven't heard any cannon fire lately. I wonder if the Civil War is coming to an end. And Porrick says he's sure they'll be fighting again because some things there's no moving on from, and it might be a good thing. And it's a good thing. And how long before this broken friendship starts splitting people in the village, and like that's the other angle of this is it doesn't become this origin story for, tales later, but becomes the thing that eventually destroys this entire community in its own civil war because people start taking sides and suddenly, friend is an enemy and nobody's trusting anyone anymore. And the entire thing is essentially the Civil War has found its way here. And that's the other direction that this whole thing could take. And maybe that's just the cynic in me, like going a much darker,
that's a
darker road
very
with
dark
this.
turn. Yes.
Yeah. But I think it's very easy to see that that's where we're meant to take it.
But there's this other piece in the middle, which is how long do you think the community legitimately continues to care about this beef between these two guys? I think the way Podrick escalated it by burning down his house was significant. But part of me does wonder, like, this is a beef between two old guys in this town. At what point does the town sort of antiviral kind of social mechanism step up and just ostracize them both? Like, we just don't care about you. Your news is shite news, as the woman in the store said, like, as she's stack ranking things that are relevant. It's old news after we all know they're fighting. They've been fighting for 10 years, say, eventually. And now we just don't care anymore. Like, give us something new. Because I think there might be some of that to it. They're doing ridiculous things. I mean, he cut off all of his fingers. He cut off his own source of execution to his inspiration. Like, why would he do that? He's broken. But eventually the town says, okay, that's the broken old coot, Colm, and nobody can take him seriously because he cut his own fingers off.
No, that's actually a good angle too. Like, that could also be where things go. But I'm always wondering, like, we never really get a final resolution of like the policeman and his story, other than the fact that he has decided he's going to go take down Porrick because he thinks that Porrick's been hiding his son in his house and is essentially working against him. Then he's interrupted on his journey by the old woman who brings him to the lake where he sees that his son is dead. Did his son kill himself after heartbreak from getting very, very kindly and gently turned down by Siobhan? Was that kind of the end for him? Was he drunk and he fell in and accidentally drowned? I don't think anybody would have killed him, but who knows?
I think he killed himself. Do you? I mean, really?
He never seemed a suicidal sort, but he did seem the sort who could get really drunk and then slip and fall and end up drowning.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's more where my brain went. Regardless, he ended up in this place. And then, like, is the cop going to blame Porrick for that? And, like, is that going to be a continuation of this story? Is, we know that the cop has it out for Porrick, but Colm also doesn't seem to like the cop, even though it seemed like the cop liked Colm, and then Colm decked him because he wouldn't shut up in that situation. So is that going to develop into something? Like, I just wonder, like, are there other opportunities for future feuds to develop from this?
Yeah. Okay. So let's talk about the cop and Colm, because I thought that was interesting. Do you think that Colm was moved by Podrick's drunken rant where he outed Dominic being fondled by his own father?
Yeah, he says as much. He says he was finally interesting.
But do you think that affected his relationship with Pater, the cop?
I do. I think it did a little bit. I mean, one, I think that he acknowledged that Pater is an ass and abuses his rank, right? When he sees him punch Porrick after Porrick visits the post office and says something to him, and the cop takes that as an offense and knocks him out. And I think that is the first sign. And then I think that there's still a friendship there, but I do think when Porrick kind of outs the cop for having been molesting his own son, I think that is kind of a turning point for Colm. And I think the next time when the cop comes up to quote help Colm out when Porrick is threatening him, and then Colm decks the cop, like I think that maybe that relationship had turned,
Yeah, like it was easier to throw that punch than earlier.
Right.
That's a thing that I think Colm is the vessel for the community relationship with authority and perceived authority, because we also get his repeated conversations with the priest, who's an idiot. And they're like, both of these sources of authority in the community are letting the community down in their own way. Pater is a child molester and a drunk, and he parades around in a policeman's uniform. And the priest has no sense of real grace in confessionals, and they end up having a profane-laden screaming fight at the end of their confessions. I think that's really interesting. Like, they run into the weirdest conversational sort of infinite loops in that confessional booth, and I wonder what that says about Colm's despair. Right, it really highlights, is the church really the best place to go to talk about depression? I'm going to say probably not, because it eventually ended up on impure thoughts. Right, that's the impure thought shaped tool is the only tool we have to deal with mental health when you go into a confessional booth, and I think that was Colm's message to deliver in this movie, was our systems are letting us down. When we're really in trouble, we don't have legal or religious support. Yeah,
and there's none of that here. The only person who, she's not even really support, but there's the old lady who really seems more like the old witch of the lake.
What the hell was she doing? She was scary.
You'd think that people could come to her to get healing or something like that. She seems like that sort of character, but definitely not.
All she has is homeopathic.
She's just incredibly creepy and says things, although very observant. And that's the thing about her, that I think she's almost the one who is designed in the story to see the truth and only speak the truth. And she says as much when she confronts Porrick at the he's hiding, which he says that Siobhan does, but he's hiding behind the wall. He pokes his head up and sees that she's standing there staring, waiting for him to stand up. And she says, there's going to be a death, maybe two, here in Inisherin. And he says something about how you're being creepy. And she's just like, no, I just, I'm just looking for the truth, or whatever she says. And I think that's an interesting element of somebody who's always watching everything going on and keeping this eye on this place in a really interesting way. And to a certain extent, she kind of ties into the title. Granted, she's singular. There's not multiple of her in the story. But as far as the Banshees of Inisherin, which happens to also be the title of the song that Colm writes, I just thought it was interesting, because the way that they describe banshees as characters who go around screaming and stuff like that, they're talking and he only likes the title because the double SH, which I thought was very funny. But he says instead of the banshees running around screaming, they're just sitting back, amused and observing. And that's essentially what this old woman is doing. She always seems to be amused by things that are happening. Even at the final moment of the film, after the house has burned down, she comes and rights a chair that has been thrown outside and sits on it and watches the beach where Colm is standing, and where Porrick comes down and has this final confrontation with him. And that's, we before we go back up into the clouds, essentially, the last thing we really see of these people is her sitting in her chair from behind, watching her watch these two people as Porrick is walking away. And there's something about this idea of this watcher who is just looking down from above at these little people, ants essentially, and just kind of laughing at the inanity of these decisions that they're doing. And I mean, she's looking at this incredible vista of this gorgeous beach on the Irish coast, yet it's these two ants that she's looking at that can't get along. And I think that's such an interesting element to the story. And again, it speaks to the beauty that Martin McDonagh certainly infused the film with.
Everything you just said seems like the most obvious connection for all of these elements that I didn't connect. That she was a Banshee of Inisherin, and I had to look up what does Banshee really mean in Gaelic, because I'm sure that makes everything make sense. And true enough, it does, Andy. It does. The Banshee roams the countryside and can be heard wailing when she predicts a death. The word Banshee comes from the Irish Banshee, which translates as woman of the fairy mounds. She could appear in a number of guises: a young, beautiful woman, a stately matron, or an ugly, frightening hag. And here we have a song that is about the Banshee still existing, but not wailing anymore. And that's exactly what this woman is. And I low-key wish that I had made that connection before the movie.
Well, it's such an interesting, and yeah, honestly, I think the reason that I remembered what a Banshee was from my Dungeons and Dragons days, because I think that's a monster that you had to fight at some point.
It is, but there's just a lot more screaming, and I think I was looking for the screaming. Yeah, but really, what I'm looking at is sirens or like mermaids, right? The screaming, ugly.
Well, and I think that it worked in my head because of that particular conversation that the two of them have about how they're not screaming; they're just amused and quiet, and that really spoke to, I guess, the intentions that McDonagh had with this character, just watching things that are going on here and how it's just a breakdown of society. And sure, I mean, there's no reason a person can't stop liking someone, like it
right.
happens. That can happen. It's just somehow in this breakup, in this particular situation, because there's so little reason for it to suddenly happen, there's so little rational explanation and rational handling of the situation that it just escalates. And that's, I think, what's so interesting in the story.
Yeah, I do too. The fact that back to the Banshee woman, the old witch, the fact that she is socially ostracized too, like the only person who actually takes her in and talks to her is Siobhan. And I wonder what that's about. Like, especially when you think about Siobhan as a sort of beautiful young woman, right? Like, is there some angle to Siobhan also being a Banshee of Inisherin in some way, shape, or form in her role as kind of protector of Podrick? And then she just abdicates her duties. She's just done.
Well, that's an interesting angle for sure, because in the scope of like acknowledging like the madness that's going on here, she acknowledges several times, you're all mad. And the cop at one point, when he's talking to her in the village, she goes off and he says something like, no wonder no one likes you here. There is this element to her also being this outsider in this village, thinking above the simple minds of these small town villagers. And there is this element of her being able to see things that they can't. And I think that is pretty interesting.
Yeah, that strikes me. Now that I understand, everything's coming clear.
Yeah. Where do you stand with McDonagh? Are you, I mean, he's only, for some reason in my head, I feel like he's directed a lot more films, but it's only 4. It's In Bruges, 7 Psychopaths, 3 Billboards Outside Ebbing, Missouri, and this.
Okay, so I love every one of these movies, right? I do. Legitimately love every one of these movies. And in fact, I thought that he had done other things, and therefore I am thrilled to say that I am a Martin McDonagh directorial completionist.
Yeah.
Or am I? Why does it say he's done 5?
He did a short film called 6 Shooter.
Oh, I didn't see that.
6 Shooter could be the other one. That's a short film that he did, half-hour long. That was the one that I think got him on the map because he won an Oscar for Best Live Action Short Film at the Oscars in 2004.
So what I find the writing, because I think he wrote all of these and has he written anything else that has been directed by someone else?
He's written a bunch of plays. Like that's where he
yeah.
started in plays in the 90s, and still works writing plays. He's executive produced a few films like The Second Death and The Guard, but I don't see that he's written anything that other people have directed.
So what's interesting about this, and I think Banshees of Inisherin is the other three movies have more comedy in them. There's more that I smile at throughout the movie. And in this one, I smile at this, and I kept pointing out moments of comedy in Banshees to my wife, saying, "See, funny comedy." She's bawling. Didn't take as well as I thought, but I think his approach, like, he has such a dry sort of wit, and I think that's what I'm seeing on screen, that he's able to take these incredibly serious situations and imbue them with comedy through humanity, through the way people talk, not as jokes, and so I find myself really moved by the way he puts these relationships on screen. And in some cases, I think he's a difficult director to nail down genre specifically. What's your take?
I mean, I am not as much a fan of Seven Psychopaths, which you are. Maybe I need to revisit that one too, because I certainly shifted my perspective on In Bruges.
Right now, I'm 1 for 1 on In Bruges. I'd rather you not test any more of these. Like, let's just leave it on the win. It's fine.
But I really enjoyed Three Billboards and Banshees, and so I find him to be a director who's certainly has some interesting style choices with his violence and his action. Like the violence in this film, the fact that Colm not only cuts his fingers off, but never bandages it. He walks around with a stump that is just bloody, like it's dripping. It's like, if you're going to cut your fingers off, at least wrap your hand up. You know, it's like, it's shocking when he's in the bar and there's like blood on the table below him, bloody music, and he's got his bloody fiddle that he's banging on his chest. Like it's just like, it's not as bloody as some of his other films.
Yeah.
But there's kind of a sick comedy in the way that he handles the gore in his films. And that's something that I don't know. It's an element in his films that I think is kind of fun. He clearly is having a fun time directing his films.
Yes.
There's always kind of this level of comedy, but I do think that he's enjoying exploring some challenging stories that I've seen in these. I enjoy these quite a bit.
I don't think he can bandage the stump. I've been thinking about that a lot. I think that he has to leave the stump unbandaged as a symbol of what he's done to himself. Like this is his grand sacrifice. And part of it is parading it around in front of everybody.
Yeah.
Making sure everybody knows.
It's disgusting.
This is a grotesquerie in our community. And it's because this guy won't stop talking to me. Like it has to highlight the pettiness of their beef.
100%.
Which one of the two of these guys, which one is Kendrick and which one is Drake? I just totally dated this podcast. And you don't even follow.
I don't even know what you're talking about.
Oh my goodness, Andy. It's been a big week in hip hop.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
Okay. Please leave this in. Please leave this in.
I was like, is this a famous pair of people I should know about? Is it from the past? No, yeah. Sometimes.
Okay.
Sometimes.
We're good.
Yeah.
We're all good. This is a time capsule. This is a time capsule. I'll send you a link for the show notes.
Oh, okay. Good.
All right.
Look at the film. What do you think? Ben Davis is the cinematographer here, who's worked on a lot of things. A lot of Marvel things, has worked on things like Guardians of the Galaxy, Doctor Strange, Eternals. Also worked with McDonagh on Three Billboards before. And I mean, working all the way back to like Layer Cake in 2004. Do you like the look? I mean, again, we've already talked about the Irish look of all of this, but I mean, is there more to it than just the capturing the lush landscape?
Well, Ben Davis, okay. I want to say it looks great. It's beautiful, but also like pick up your phone and point it at Ireland. You're going to have a movie. Like, it's just so gorgeous. The source material is so gorgeous. You want to see, like, I think Three Billboards is probably a more challenging thing to get, but he also did Guardians and Captain Marvel. Like, this dude clearly has chops. This feels like a meditation, in his work. This feels like something that he just loves. It has a look, a warmth to it that I think is really, really special and probably fun as a result, to be able to capture this landscape and not actually have to swing so hard to get it.
That's funny because I feel like it's kind of a colder look to a lot of it. Like a lot of the night scenes, just there is this chill that we have in this film, which may be part of maybe I'm just bringing that to it because of this broken friendship and everything. But
yeah,
it does feel.
Well, also you live in Phoenix and I live in the Pacific Northwest.
You're around this all the time.
Yeah,
but also it's like we're like there's plenty of green, but we're also like the way that they're capturing like the stone walls that are everywhere, and how when they're on these roads, these little dirt roads, it's always kind of wedged between two stone walls, right? Like that's kind of like they've built these stone walls to kind of guide these roads and everything. And I don't know, I think that they found a really simple but effective way to capture it. I really enjoyed, though, the lighting on the priest's face. There's behind the person in the confessional is a cut cross in the wall, and the sunlight comes through it and it illuminates the priest's face in a cross. And I always found that to be such an interesting look. But yeah, it's a beautiful film.
I mean, talk about a guy who just has an incredible breadth of tone. As a cinematographer, he's got Heads of State coming up with Carla Gugino and Idris Elba and Jack Quaid, and he is the DP behind the controversial Spider-Man universe film Kraven the Hunter coming up, which should be an interesting exploration. But I find myself really fascinated by kind of what he captures. The King's Man to Eternals, like those were back to back for him. That's a crazy swing. That's what I mean by, and maybe that's what I mean by Banshees of Inisherin being a meditation. And I think you're right. Like color, it is cold. Like it is a cooler, sort of desaturated look. But there's just so much. Maybe it's just me longing for so much more nature, like that sort of natural scape where these people live and walk and exist, I think is really satisfying. And it's very dark. I mean, they go inside a home and it's very, very dark. 1923 Irish Island. Yeah, but man, I love it.
Carter Burwell did the music. He's worked with McDonagh a number of times. I like that, McDonagh didn't want this to just feel like Irish music. Burwell tried for a childlike or Disney character type of music for Morag, which I think is really funny, and using fiddle themes for Colm. And I think that worked quite well. Plus, we have a bunch of traditional songs in the pub, and then also we have a number of songs that just kind of play over the score. Like it's actually interesting. The opening song, it sounded Gaelic, but I'm looking now, it's actually Bulgarian. It's a Bulgarian folk song. Isn't that interesting?
That's interesting.
Yeah. But it just speaks to this sense of this otherworldliness that we have here. And I think that that's what I enjoy. It feels like everything feels Irish, but it also feels like this mythical Ireland in a fable. And it's funny, Inisherin actually means the island of Ireland, which I think is kind of funny.
Yeah, like Inishmore, the Moor Island. Did he do all of Martin's movies? He did Three Billboards, Inisherin, and he did Bruges.
Did he do Seven Psychopaths?
It seems like that. Yeah, he did. Seven Psychopaths. Okay.
And he's done all of his music.
Yeah, he's done them all. I love Carter Burwell. I think he's done some fantastic. I wish his name started with a J, Jarter Burwell.
Just so he could be on the 10 Js?
Just going to be the 11th J.
Now I just need to come up with the Cs.
Yeah. There's got to be more than one, right?
Sure.
Chris, there's got to be a lot of Chris composers.
I'm sure. All
right.
Any last thoughts? Did we talk enough about Dominic? Any last thoughts on Dominic? As far as characters go?
Unbelievable character. I love this character because he's the character, like what do they call the stereotype? This is probably a TV tropes question where you have a character who presents as the dimmest but ends up having the lines that communicate the most wisdom. What is that? What's that called? That's a thing. Because he's the one, when we have that conversation where he said they're on the wall and Podrick tells him, I told that guy that his dad died and he better get home. And Dominic says, that's about the meanest thing I've ever heard, and stands up and walks away. Like that's the heart of the movie. And I think that's incredible. And so I feel so much like this character, Dominic, who wears his heart on his sleeves, and you think he's not fazed by any of the horrible things that are done to him. He's beaten by his dad. He's molested by his dad. Nobody in the community gives him the time of day except for Podrick. And we really see that Podrick only does it as a sort of social measure of social relativism to make sure he's always not quite as dim as Dominic is. And then Dominic ends up delivering like so much heart all the way up to his very, very sad end. And I think he's incredible. And I think he's so beautifully portrayed. Again, talk about an actor in Barry Keoghan who is able to do a variety of incredible things.
Yeah, no, it's so different when you watch this and then you see Saltburn. It's like such a different performance. Yeah, and I think that he rightly had a lot of recognition from this film because he's playing such an interesting broken character. Like he's this character who's gone through this trauma. He's not super bright, but he's trying to figure things out. And his conversation that he has with Siobhan by the lake is just a heartbreaker when she has to kind of kindly let him down and he goes on his way. So it's, this is a character who's struggling and trying to figure out his place in this world when there doesn't seem to be much of a place for him,
Yeah. And yeah, exactly. Nobody wants to help him on this journey, right? To find his way.
Yeah. Any last thoughts, or shall we keep on trucking?
I think we keep on trucking.
All right. Well, we'll be right back, but first, our credits.
The Next Reel is a production of True Story FM, engineering by Andy Nelson, music by Ben Winwood, Oriel Novella, and Eli Catlin. Andy usually finds all the stats for the awards and numbers at d-numbers.com, boxofficemojo.com, imdb.com, and wikipedia.org. Find the show at truestory.fm. And if your podcast app allows ratings and reviews, please consider doing that for our show. Andy, can you believe we've almost hit 700 episodes of The Next Reel?
I know, it's crazy. And with all the other episodes in our family of podcasts, we are well over 1,200 episodes of movie conversation. It's really pretty amazing that we've gotten to have these in-depth movie chats every week for over a decade now.
And we couldn't have done it without our loyal community of film fans. Their support over the years has meant so much.
For sure. That reminds me, we should give the merch store a shout out. Buying shirts from thenextreel.com/merch is a great way listeners can continue to support the show. Plus, they get to sport our great designs.
Absolutely. I think sometimes folks forget we have a variety of shirts, mugs, phone cases, and more available. In fact, a great place to start is with a shirt sporting the Next Reel's logo.
We also have that classic Fast Times Spicoli Surf School tee, or the weirdly popular Rusty's European Tour shirt.
The one from National Lampoon's European Vacation. Why is that so popular?
Search me, but we have sold a ridiculous number of those. I guess there are a lot of Rustys taking trips to Europe?
We're always adding new designs based on movies we've covered, like our brand new design for a streetcar named Desire, featuring a streetcar named Desire. So if you want to rep your love of TNR and films, head to thenextreel.com thenextreel.com/merch.
Every purchase helps us continue to have these weekly in-depth conversations. So visit thenextreel.com/merch today.
And as always, thanks for listening and being a part of the Next Reel community. We've got lots more great movie chats coming your way. Okay. It's time for award season.
Time for award season. Yes, this film did very well for itself. 146 wins with 361 other nominations. It's really funny over the course of this particular season because, we've been looking at awards. Like we picked for every one of our series an award category and are discussing the films that were nominated in it. And you can see the change in the award world from when we started in 1939 and have gone all the way up to this particular series, which is the 2022 DGA Awards for Best Director. Looking at how many awards there are, it's kind of crazy. And so
award inflation for sure.
It's definitely award inflation. Like I'd be curious, like what would the awards numbers here look like were this film from 1939?
Yeah.
Or maybe we just look at the percentage of awards, and do it that way. So who knows? Regardless, this film did well for itself. At the Oscars, we had a number of nominations, no wins there. Supporting actress, Carrie Condon was nominated for Best Supporting Actress, but lost to Jamie Lee Curtis in Everything Everywhere All at Once. You're going to hear that film a lot with this. Colin Farrell was nominated for Best Actor, but lost to Brendan Fraser in The Whale. Both Gleeson and Keegan were nominated for Supporting Actor, but both lost to Ke Huy Quan in Everything Everywhere All at Once. The Score was nominated, but lost to All Quiet on the Western Front. Best Picture was nominated, Best Directing, Best Original Screenplay, and Best Editing, but all of those lost to Everything Everywhere All at Once. At the BAFTAs, it was nominated for Best Film, but lost to All Quiet on the Western Front. It, however, won Outstanding British Film of the Year. Colin Farrell was nominated for Lead Actor, but lost to Austin Butler in Elvis. Keegan won Best Supporting Actor, beating out Gleeson. Condon won Best Supporting Actress. McDonagh won Original Screenplay. It lost Editing to Everything Everywhere. Lost Director to Edward Berger for All Quiet on the Western Front. Also lost Score to that as well. Over at the DGA Awards, which is the reason we're here, it did get nominated for Outstanding Directorial Achievement in a Theatrical Feature Film, but lost to the Daniels for Everything Everywhere All at Once. And I was curious after all of that, Martin McDonagh, did he actually win anything as director? Because this certainly seemed like the year for the Daniels as far as the wins. I did, in fact, find several. He had approximately 40 nominations for Best Director. There were only 2 wins for him. One was the New York Film Critics Online, and the other was the Greatest Western New York Film Critics Association Awards. So New York loves him.
Okay. Greater Western New York, headquartered out of what? Jamestown? Buffalo, I guess.
Yeah, who knows?
Yeah. All right. How to do at the box office. Did this wee movie make a few bucks?
Well, McDonagh's film cost $20 million or $21.6 million in today's dollars. The movie premiered at Venice September 5th, 2022, before opening October 21st in a limited release opposite Black Adam, everybody's favorite film, Ticket to Paradise, and After Sun, where this opened in 18th place. It went wide a few weeks later on November 4th, where it jumped to 7th place in the box office, and it ended up earning $10.6 million domestically and $41.7 million internationally for a total gross of $56.5 million in today's dollars. All told, it did well for itself, landing with an adjusted profit per finished minute of $306,000.
Outstanding.
Yes.
The little movie that could.
Yes.
We're
going to have a few of those.
Yeah, we're going to have a few of those. And I love that that we're doing today's dollars. And it's quite an appreciation in today's dollars for just a few years ago.
Yeah, surprisingly. Yeah,
that surprised me.
There still is a little bit of a bump.
T-bills, everybody. T-bills.
Well, it's a great movie. I'm glad that we did discuss it. And, and I'm excited to be looking at this series of these 2022 DGA noms for Best Director. So should be a good final series to end this season on.
Yeah, God, me too. These have been great.
Yeah. All right, well, we'll be right back for our ratings. But first, Here's the trailer for next week's movie, Steven Spielberg's The Fabelmans.
Movies are dreams that you never forget. Sammy?
The lights change how everything looks. It's hard to find our house.
Ours is the dark house with no lights.
In this family, it's the scientists versus the artists. Sammy's on my team, takes after me.
What kind of movie are we gonna make?
You dismiss what he does. It's playful or imaginative. You could afford to be a little encouraging.
She should have been a concert piano player. What she got in her heart is what you got.
You can't just love something, you also have to take care of it. It's more important than your hobby.
Can you stop calling it a hobby?
Mom got a monkey.
Why'd you get a monkey?
Because I needed a laugh.
You always have to be the center of attention.
Stop shouting at her.
That has been nothing but disrespect from you. I'm your mother.
Family, art. It'll tear you in two.
You stop making movies, it'll break your mother's heart.
I don't know what to do anymore.
You do what your heart says you have to.
What was your favorite part?
It is hard to believe we've been having in-depth weekly conversations about movies since 2011.
You're telling me producing this show week after week is so much fun, but it does require a lot of work behind the scenes. If you'd like to help support our efforts, one easy way is by using our Originals page when shopping for books and movies that we've covered.
Your purchases made through our links give us a small commission at no extra cost to you and allow us to keep having these great discussions.
The Originals page at thenextreel.com/originals links to the source material for all of our adapted film discussions. Purchasing through our links supports the show.
In Season 13, we explore various awards categories and the films nominated in them.
We wrapped up our 1940 Best Picture series with adaptations of Mice and Men from John Steinbeck and Wuthering Heights from Emily Bronte's novel, not to mention the play Dark Victory by George Brewer Jr. and Bertram Bloch.
The 1947 Academy Award adapted screenplay series featured Anna and the King of Siam, based on Margaret Langdon's book, plus The Best Years of Our Lives, Brief Encounter, and The Killers.
The 1952 cinematography nominees included Death of a Salesman and A Streetcar Named Desire, A Place in the Sun, based on both a play and a book, and Strangers on a Train, based on Patricia Highsmith's first novel.
So many great movies based on books and plays, like Beckett, The Pumpkin Eater,
A Boy and His Dog, Rollerball,
The Princess Bride, Congo, The Scarlet Letter,
Jackie Brown, The Deep End, The Gray, The Woman in Black,
and Top Gun Maverick, which I'm very much looking forward to revisiting.
Get the source books at thenextreel.com/originals.
Start your next read or reread from the movies we've covered. Visit thenextreel.com/originals today. Letterboxd, Andy. Letterboxd, where we do the grueling work of stealing stars from our own past ratings and applying them to today's films. What are you going to do?
Let's just say that's Pete's. Pete likes to steal stars.
Pete and everybody else. Everybody knows that's the thing.
I birth stars. I am the one constantly just
Gross.
giving extra stars.
Like gallstones? Is that where they come from?
It's either that or like boogers. I don't know. It's something like that. Not exactly sure where they come from, but they seem to be everywhere.
Pearls from an oyster. Let's go with that.
There you go. I really love this film. I feel like I gave it 4 stars on my initial watch. I feel like it's just, there's so much to like about this film. I'm going to bump it to 4.5 on this watch.
You know what? You and I are in very similar stead. It was 4 stars for me. I am bumping it to 5.
No half stars, right? Taking it to the top. Look at that. All right.
Taking
that will average it out to 4 3/4, or that will land at 4 3/4, which over on Letterboxd will round up to 5 stars. So starting off this series with a high note. I guess we'll have to see where the whole thing's going to go.
Yeah.
Well, remember, you can find the show at The Next Reel. You can find me at Soda Creek Film, and you can find Pete at Pete Wright. So what did you think of the Banshees of Inisherin? We would love to hear your thoughts. Hop into the Show Talk channel over in the Discord community, where we will be talking about the movie this week.
When the movie ends,
our conversation begins.
Letterboxd tip with Andrew.
As Letterboxd always doeth.
I went to the bottom of the barrel.
Ooh,
what about you?
Boy.
Where'd you go?
I ended up at 4 stars, right where I was initially. 4 stars and a heart. So,
all right. Do you want to start? Do you want me to start?
I'll start. Who talks first?
All right.
I'm going to do mine. 4 stars by Laura Saladino, who also gave it a heart. And I think that it speaks a lot of truths. Sadly, men will literally cut their fingers off before going to therapy. Oh, just so sad, but so
That's
true.
Awesome.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I've got Hoyt comes in with a half star who says, I love movies. I tend to rate ones I like higher than most others here. Likewise, I'll rate movies I dislike much lower than others as well. I tried to watch this flick. It's well made and well acted, but the dialogue bored me, and the story is ridiculous, implausible, and stupid. Adding this one to my praised films that suck list.
Ouch.
Yes, ouch. I totally get it. And this is why the reason I picked this, because this is from people I know, this is not the first time I've heard this kind of feedback. We have another friend who before I'd seen it, had seen it and said, I hated that movie so much. And I wonder if it's like how much this movie taps into the way we relate to our closest friends. And if we have any sort of beef and we don't know how to deal with it, and then we watch this movie, it like shines too bright a light on it. You know what I mean? Like,
well, and certainly McDonagh is a director who ends up creating a lot of kind of splits as far as opinions, because Three Billboards also was very divisive as far as people loving it or people hating it and being very angry about it. And I think that's an interesting element with his films. And, some critics actually called this out as feeling like there's so little here. It's like a short film that got extended to feature length. Like, I suppose there are a wide variety, but and
it's possible. I remember that feeling of how is he going to, like we talked about it, how is he going to build a movie that's 2 hours long off of this premise? And for me, the reward is that he did, and that it became absurdist black sort of comedy, and it's like written for me. I love it. I love the way it ends. I love all of it.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
Is that a Popcorn Pete perspective, do you think? Am I still fighting that? I can't remember if we let that go in the Next Show community.
I don't know.
Still
Did
Popcorn
you let
Pete
that
and your
go?
Archie Andy?
Maybe you're the one holding on to it.
I haven't even thought about it until just right now. Why did that pop in my head?
Yeah.
I have. It's the last thing on my before I die checklist is shake the yolk of Popcorn Pete. I'm just waiting to check it off on the wall above my monitor, and then I can go.
It's so hard. I can't let it go.
It's going to be on my headstone. That's my legacy, is just a bunch of checked off tasks and then shake the Popcorn Pete thing, an empty box next to it.
Oh, so sad. So sad.
All right. Thanks, Letterboxd. I've been podcasting since 2006. In that time, I've tried countless hosting platforms, but in August 2022, we switched to Transistor to power all of our shows here at True Story FM, and it's been a game changer.
I love the Transistor allows unlimited podcasts and storage without extra charges. We can publish so much content, and we do. If you want to start up a podcast, do yourself a favor and host your show on Transistor.
With their one-click publishing, you can get your new show onto all the major podcast directories effortlessly.
And their website builder lets you quickly build custom sites for each show.
The detailed analytics are invaluable too. You can access all kinds of listener data anytime.
Oh, and the versatile players allow you to embed episodes anywhere to reach new listeners. Plus, the team behind Transistor is super responsive and keeps making the platform even better.
After using countless hosting services over 15 plus years, Transistor has been, hands down, the best podcast partner for us.
If you want a hosting platform to take all the worry out of getting your podcast out into the world, go to thenextreel.com/transistor and check it out.
Support our show and support your own show by going to thenextreel.com/transistor. Start growing your podcast today.